So often we talk about professional sports and collegiate sports here on the show, but today I wanted to take a different angle and discuss high school sports, specifically high school football. And we're going to go even deeper and talk about California high school football compared to Idaho high school football. You don't want to miss this one. It's the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Game Time Guru. Once again, I'm your host, Shane Larson, coming at you today with a special guest of mine, Mr. Daniel Jenkins, Jinxie, D-Jinx, whatever we call him. It's Daniel Jenkins. He's here with me, and I appreciate you joining me today, Daniel.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's glad to be here.
For sure, man. So I want to let the listeners know who you are. So let's just, if you could explain like who you are and, I don't know, maybe couple sentences, what would you say? Like, describe yourself. Who are you? Are you a football fan? Are you a husband? Whatever. Like, just describe yourself.
So I am a man of faith first, and I am a husband to my beautiful wife, Melissa. And I am not just a football or basketball fan, man. I'm a sports fan, so I love it all, man.
Perfect.
Golf, tennis, hockey, I love it all. So I am a sports fan, just not a football fan.
I like it. And that's perfect because that's why I want to bring on the show. You're a sports fan. And this show, the Game Time Guru, is to deliver the goal is to deliver a panoramic view on sports, just giving a wide view on sports. So we don't just talk football or anything like that. So that's why you're a perfect fit for the show. And speaking of that, we're going to talk about some of your sports knowledge just to break in to the show a little bit. You're a Lakers fan, from what I know. We've had a lot of discussions on this. I want your thoughts real quick on the beginning of the season for your Lakers and what you think is going to happen going forward.
So 21 games in to the season, we take on the Denver Nuggets tonight. I think it's gone well so far. A lot of expectations were put on Lonzo Ball and what he was supposed to be doing this season by management, but I think 21 games in so far, he's done well. He's got to remember he's only a 20-year-old kid. So he's still figuring it out. So as a rookie, once you figure it out, come year 2 or 3, I think he's going to be really good.
Okay. Do you guys have enough patience to develop those players? Because it seems like the Lakers in the last couple of years, they're not really having the patience. They bring in a couple guys. They had D'Angelo Russell, ship him off. They have all these guys that keep making moving parts, like these moving pieces, and they keep putting them away. Like, what's going to happen with Randall? And what do you have in the future? You got Lonzo. You think you're going to keep him, but who else is going to stay there from the squad you got right now?
Brandon Ingram, I think, is going to stay. Julius Randle, I think, is really proven that he can accept his role on the bench. Jordan Clarkson is another one who's accepted his role on the bench. A surprise has been Kyle Kuzma.
Kuzma's a stud.
27th pick. I went down and saw them play the Utah Jazz a couple weeks ago, and Donovan Mitchell, which is another low pick, and those have been the two surprises for the NBA as far as rookies go. So I think Kuzma has been a really good surprise. So he's definitely in our future, and my favorite player in the NBA right now is Brandon Ingram. He's been, I'm a Duke guy as well, so I love to see Brandon Ingram kind of come into his own, and I think over the next couple of years, as he grows into his quote-unquote man body, I think he'll be very, very good. Okay.
So you got high hopes for the future here in the near future, actually, in the next couple of years with the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do.
I like it. Let's talk about the NFL real quick. You're a Denver Broncos fan. To be honest with you, I don't know what you are because, you like the Broncos, but you love Tom Brady. We'll discuss it. But what do you think about the NFL so far this season? Has it been a weird season? What do you think? Has it impressed you or kind of disappointed?
It's been a little bit of everything. It's been a little bit of a disappointment. It's been a little bit of excitement. The AFC West, which was in the beginning of the season was touted to be the strongest division, has turned out to be the weakest division. The Raiders were supposed to pick up where they left off and be a Super Bowl contender. It's not looking like that. The Chiefs started out hot, and now they've gone cold.
Dang.
The Chargers were 0-5. Now they're 5-6. And then the Denver Broncos, my team, over the last couple of years have had a top 5 defense. You know, a couple of years the top defense in the league, but this year with the rotating door at quarterback, we can't seem to figure it out. So that 3-8 record that we have now doesn't really look too good on the defense that's still top 5. So it's been really tough. You know, the Patriots are who they are, the Steelers are who they are, and then when you go over to the NFC, the biggest disappointment for me is none other than your Cowboys.
Yeah. Hey, I'm right there with you, man.
Because that was a team that everyone looked at to being that really taking that next step.
Oh yeah.
And I think that with Ezekiel Elliott, if he would have just taken those first 6 games,
Yep.
You probably would have been in a better situation now than you were probably at the beginning of the season. You know, you can bite the bullet at the beginning of the season, but now when it's really coming down to winning time, it's not looking like they have that horse back there to really solidify that running game.
And speaking of that, like, had we taken it, like you said at the beginning of the season, which I understand why he didn't, because I understand that from what he says and what we've seen. I understand why he didn't take it, but had he done that, we hit our toughest stretch of our season right when he took his suspension. The hardest games, like he was able to play against the Chiefs, which now is turning out to not be such a great win anymore, but like the Falcons, the Eagles, the Chargers, like when the Chargers were actually rolling all of a sudden out of nowhere, like these hard teams that we played, and he took it right at the wrong time. So I think we could have probably won, 3 or 4 games at least at the beginning of the season had he taken that. And then he goes out, we lose our first 3. Like it's frustrating to see, and it's been weird. It's been a weird season, and like you said, your division, especially the Broncos, that quarterback spot it surprises me that John Elway can't find a quarterback. It is just so weird to me that he can't figure out that position, considering he played it so well for so many years. But I mean, Paxton Lynch and Brock Osweiler are the exact same quarterback, just a tall waste of space. Like that can't. I don't know how they have NFL contracts. And then Simeon's trying to do his job, but I mean he just can do so much. Like that's all he can do. I don't know. I feel bad for the guy.
So I was listening to a sportscaster earlier this week. Former Denver Broncos Shannon Sharp, and he talked about the 6, 7, and over quarterbacks usually don't do well in the NFL just because they're so tall.
I can see that.
So one of the ones that's surprised everyone is Joe Flacco. But Joe Flacco had to learn in college that, maybe I need to go down to a lower division and play to really find myself. That's why he transferred from the University of Michigan to go to Delaware. And when he came out of Delaware, he was one of the top quarterbacks coming out in that draft. And
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that story. So okay.
So that's why Joe Flacco is able to do what he's doing, because he was a 5-star recruit, and then he turned out to be who he is now, Super Bowl champion,
Okay.
So that's, sometimes those 6, 7, and over quarterbacks aren't who we thought they are.
Exactly.
So, and it's a standard, it's almost like when we talk about the Lakers, the standard is championships. So when you're a quarterback like John Elway, who's been in the Super Bowl, who's won Super Bowls, MVPs, and the standard for him is perfection and championships. So it's hard to believe that a guy who played at that high level still can't find a quarterback.
Exactly.
So
it's frustrating. Hopefully you guys will find one. Who knows? Maybe take your boy Darnold. Speaking of Darnold, let's talk about your USC Trojans. You're a USC fan. And let's talk about that. How come you're a USC fan? Like, are you from there? What's the whole background behind USC? Right now, as we're recording this, Jenksy is wearing his gear. You're going to find him in his gear. He's got a Reggie Bush jersey too, like that he always wears. Like he's got all the jerseys. And I want you to give a little background on this. Why are you such a big fan?
So being down from Southern California, Bellflower, California, Long Beach is where my family still resides. It's always a tug of war of who you want to root for. Do you want to root for UCLA? Do you want to root for USC? So my senior year in high school, both of them were recruiting me. And I went to both games, but I really fell in love with USC and their culture. This is back when Reggie Bush was there, Matt Leinart. So they were at the pinnacle of success there. So just being down on the field with Pete Carroll and his staff and just learning from them, I was like, okay, this is my school. So I've always been in love with USC, and even still to this day when I go to games, I'm still reminded of those times where it was just fun being a recruit and just having fun, just learning from, some of the top professionals in their business.
I like that. So speaking of that, so you were a recruit. They were recruiting you out of St. John Bosco, right? That's where you went to high school. I want to start talking about your playing days in California, which is the whole point of this podcast. Like not the whole point, but the main point of the podcast is talking about, the comparison between California ball compared to Idaho. And in St. John Bosco, you're there. For those of the people that don't know, can you give a little bit of an explanation of what is St. John Bosco? Like what's the school? Why are they so popular and stuff like that? Just give a little background on the school.
So St. John Bosco is a private all-boys Catholic high school located in Bellflower, California. And they strive for excellence in your faith, your academics, and then athletics third. So a big thing with St. John Bosco is becoming, entering into high school as a boy, but leaving a man.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that they like to teach you, and one of the things that's in the handbook. At least when I was there, I don't know if they still give out that same handbook, and if it's been updated, I'm sure it has. But that's one of the things that they really instill in a lot of the students there is you're going to enter here as a boy, but you're going to leave here a man ready to take on the world. I
like that. And to go with that point, on the website it says, like First St. John Bosco says, develop young men, parents, faculty, and staff with the spirit to contribute to our school, our communities, and our country. So how did the school live up to that statement while you were there?
So just a lot of things that we did as far as community service. Didn't matter if you were an athlete or not. A lot of things of opening the doors when we could to different schools to come and use our facilities. If we had some other, like I said, community service things that we needed to do around L.A. County, we always did it with a smile. We always did it with our uniform and our name. Serving our country, I know there's a lot of guys that I graduated high school with that are in the military.
Okay.
One of my good friends, I believe he just got married a couple weeks ago. Right out of high school, he went to the Army. And then I had another friend go to the Marines. Had another friend be in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And then about 2 weeks after we graduated, had a friend go to West Point, right? And
West Point, kidding.
It's automatic. Once you graduate, it's time for you to become, a soldier. So going to West Point was a really big deal for him because his brother was a graduate of St. John Bosco earlier, 2 years prior, and then he went on to West Point, so he wanted to follow in his brother's footsteps and go to West Point. And just talking to him a couple weeks ago, he loved it. He loved his time there at West Point. He wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Okay, so the school actually does live up to that statement, and from everything you just said, that's actually really cool. So I'm looking here, and I remember one time I was at work with you. For anybody who doesn't know, I used to work with Daniel Jenkins over at our other company that I used to work for, and that's where I met him. And you were talking to me one day about like how it was like during game days. Can you give us like an explanation of what game day was like when you were at St. John Bosco? You talked about like your uniforms that you wore, like you wore, I think it was just like your normal school clothes, but didn't you have to wear a uniform, or you had lunch or early morning breakfast? There was some sort of structure to your day.
Yeah, so you get to school, usually school started around 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then on game days, the varsity players would wear their uniforms that they would wear that day, so the game jersey of that day, along with khaki pants, and it had all shirts, whether you were an athlete or not, all shirts had to be tucked in. So it was a little structure. Your facial hair had to be clean. Your haircut couldn't be over a certain length. So it was pretty structured. Some days we would have high school rallies. We did have a sister school that was probably about 2 miles down the road, St. Joseph High School, which was an all-girls Catholic high school. So we shared a lot of our high school pep rallies with them. A lot of our band was kind of intertwined, so it was both male and female. Of course, our cheerleaders came from over there as well. But after class, our seventh period was usually a varsity sport. And on game days, we would go to Mass. And if anyone's familiar with the Catholic faith, they always go to Mass. Now, not everyone that goes to St. John Bosco is religious. So for some people, they have to get used to it, just like any private school. Usually private schools have the notion of the best education. So you don't necessarily have to be in that faith to attend the school. So we would go to Mass, and after Mass was over, school was usually ended. For instance, if it was a home game, we would just stay at the school. We weren't allowed to leave, but the parents would provide a dinner for us. It was usually either lasagna or spaghetti, just some kind of carbs that we would have right before the game. And usually the coaches would arrive about then, and we would be given a test.
Okay.
Right? So just to make sure we have studied our playbook during the week. We knew which guy we were focusing on. And it was offense, defense, and even sometimes special teams. All right. So it was, if you played all three sides of the ball, then you got 3 tests, when we had our dinner. So after dinner, we would go to, we would have about 15 minutes to kind of just walk around, gather our thoughts, and then we would have a walkthrough. And then after our walkthrough, we would get taped and go get dressed, and it's time to go.
Man, that is a structured day. I remember you telling me something, and I was like, dang, I couldn't. That's why I was stumbling over my words here. I was like, I can't remember all the stuff you told me. But you did tell me that's how it kind of was. It was a structured day, but kind of kept you guys focused, had like little things. You knew what was coming, like this is how the day is going to go. I want to talk about your opinion on the athletes, because you said it's a private school. Do you think that the better athletes in California, and this is just purely opinion-based, but do you think the better athletes go to private schools or public schools? Like, where do you usually find the better football teams or whatever in Cali?
I think it's a mix of both.
Okay.
Now, you'll get some what they call inner-city kids that aren't able to go to the private schools, or they aren't.
But why is that? Can you expand on that? Is there a cost?
Yeah, so there's a quite hefty cost
Okay.
to go into a private school. I know St. John Bosco was inexpensive when I went, and I don't use inexpensive very lightly. It was inexpensive to go there, but now the price is outrageous.
Okay.
So, and some private schools, will work with you. Majority of all private schools will work with you if you want to attend the schools and you get good grades and you do what you're supposed to do. So they'll work with you on getting your tuition paid. But sometimes people just aren't allowed to, or just are unable to go to the school. So they just stick with what they know in the area that they know, and they just stay there. I remember a situation a couple years ago. There were 4 kids that transferred into St. John Bosco that were pretty good athletes, but they went to a couple camps with one of the coaches on staff, and he got them to transfer over, and they actually made a big difference in our program, which brought our first state championship a couple years ago. So those kids now should be, just about all of them are graduating college and are on their way to the NFL.
Seriously?
On their way to the NFL. You got guys like Josh Rosen, which is the quarterback at UCLA, which was the quarterback of that team. Jaleel Woodall, which was the safety of that team. You had Nate Dogg's son, I forget his name, I can't remember his name, but he was one of the top corners coming out. I think he went to the University of Washington for a little bit, then he transferred. And then another than Shea Fields out of Colorado.
Okay.
Which was he was a senior this year, so he's on this, one of the top receivers coming out this year. So all those guys were on the same team, which really put St. John Bosco on the map to being the number 1 team in the country that year. So that was a pretty good. I got to see them play in person that year, and they were a really good football team.
Yeah, and I remember I was actually watching a documentary. They weren't playing, but I watched this documentary called QB1 Beyond the Lights, and this was last year. They were following Jake Fromm, who now plays for Georgia. Tate Martell, who was playing at Bishop Gorman, now plays for Ohio State. He's 3rd string on the depth chart, but they were playing St. John Bosco, and I was like, man, that's the school that Jenkins went to. I was like, dang. So they do have a lot of recognition, at least what I thought was the national level, at least the regional level. It's kind of cool. It must have been because of the push they had maybe with those players. I don't know, but that school has a lot of recognition, and I saw it on a documentary. So I think it's pretty cool that they're pretty well known. Speaking of the athletes that you guys played or that were there, I want to hear who you had to play against. Do you remember any big athletes that you played against during your time at St. John Bosco?
Deshaun Jackson was probably the biggest one that we faced, and faced him for 2 years. Unfortunately, our junior year, I am on his highlight tape for him.
Are you really?
Me. But Deshaun Jackson ran by a lot of people. So that's probably the biggest guy that I would say still currently playing right now that I played against in high school. And,
okay.
One of my best friends who played at UC Davis, we never forget this story that our senior year, we're playing them in the second round of the playoffs, and we know he's running a go route, which is just a straight fly route up the field, and there he runs about a 4.4, low 4.4, close to a 4.39, and he thought that he could outrun Deshaun Jackson, and the ball's in the air, and he never forgets that he's running, and then all of a sudden he hears footsteps, he looks back, and Deshaun runs right past him, catches the ball, 49-yard touchdown. And it was, and we always look at that play and we always go, how he was about 5 to 7 yards back, and we thought the ball was overthrown, and he just runs right by him, and it's a touchdown. And we're like, what happened? So Deshaun Jackson was one of those athletes, because I was a punter in high school. That was, hey, you better kick the ball away from him, or else you're going to be in trouble.
Right.
And a couple years ago, the Giants
didn't do that.
The Giants kicker found that out really well. So I always laugh when teams kick it to him, even when he was in college at Cal, because I'm like, in the college at Cal, because I'm like, why would you kick it to him? He's one of the fastest guys on the field. He's one of the best athletes on the field. I knew that in high school for 2 years, that if you put the ball in his hands on special teams where there's so much space, you're going to find yourself in trouble.
Oh, man. That's so cool that you got to play against him. I think that's rad. Not a lot of people can say that. But I want to hear something before we break into a different segment. I want to talk about your days there when you were playing. Do you hold any records over at St. John Bosco during your days over there as a running back? Tell the people you played punter, running back. What else did you play?
So I played free safety and strong safety. I no longer hold the record for the longest touchdown run, which was 94 yards. I believe it was broken by he's the backup quarterback now. I broke it last year as a sophomore. Real Mitchell, I believe is his name, and 98-yard touchdown. I believe it was.
Okay.
So I used to hold records there, but no longer do I hold a record for the longest run.
But it stood for how long? Almost 10 years?
No, it. I think it was broken before that.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I just know that that's the more recent one that I know of.
Oh, okay.
That was long. So once I believe I turned to that game. It was on a Saturday, and it was the second play of the game, and he took off down the field. And I'm like, well, if I had a record, it's gone now.
It's gone now, yeah.
So that was the only one I had. I didn't have any touchdown records or yards records that we play a different offense than they do now. We were more the traditional, early 2000s two-back offense that you see now in the NFL, which we had a fullback. I was a tailback. My junior year, I was a fullback, but moved over to tailback my senior year. But we were more of that offense, the tight end and not really going shotgun or pistol or what they're doing now. It was mainly under center, two-back offense, and we're just going to pound it out. And that's
Stanford.
Yep, that's kind of how it was.
I like it, man. What's your favorite memory that you have from there?
So I got a couple favorite memories. Obviously the 94-yard touchdown was one of my favorite memories, leaving St. John Bosco. But probably when I was there, that would have to be the best one.
Okay.
But my favorite memory of St. John Bosco football is watching them win their first state championship, because California didn't always have state playoffs. It was usually you won your section and that was it.
Okay.
So it wasn't until probably about 5-6 years ago, maybe 7, that California decided that they were going to have a state playoffs, a state championship. So it's been a long time.
Okay. That's awesome, man. So have you said you've gone back, you've watched a few games. Is there anything like similarities now at St. John Bosco to what you were, when you were there? Is there any differences, like how the school's structured, how game day might be, might not have the same structures you guys have? What's the comparison now compared to then?
So Bosco is because they're getting so much national attention, the difference is they don't play home games at home.
Oh.
So now they play home games around the corner, which is a nearby community college, or JC, called Cerritos College, because they pack so many fans. So because they pack so many fans, our high school isn't able to hold them quite yet. So when I was home, our high school is building a new stadium that was very, very donated, heavily donated by some big-time boosters that the range of money is in the millions.
Yeah.
So, and just to finally see that the track is getting done and the football field is really going to get taken care of, it really speaks volumes to that current coaching staff and the school to really say, okay, we need to start bringing people back to the high school, and not, okay, you want to come see St. John Bosco, you can go off to, Cerritos College or Saddleback College, not really a home stadium for us. So that's good to see. I don't know when it's going to be done. I believe it said it's projected to be done by next season, because it's not like it's a college where they have to revamp everything.
Right.
They're just redoing the field and putting some extra bleachers in there. So we'll see. So we'll see if it's done next season. Maybe if they play on the Saturday, maybe I can go out there. But if they play on the Friday, that'll be a little tough.
Right. No, that's awesome, man. So came here to Idaho. Right now, you're actually coaching in Idaho and here in the Valley area. And you coach at a private school. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay. What's the school that you coach at?
Nampa Christian High School.
Nampa Christian High School. Okay. So, we don't have a ton of prep / private schools, whatever you want to call it, here in the Valley. There's some big names that we have. We've got like Cole Valley Christian. We've got Bishop Kelly, Nampa Christian, and there might be a few others in the Valley. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's not a ton. It seems like in the bigger cities, the bigger states, they have a lot more of that. I want you to kind of just be honest, like compare what the private school is that you're coaching at right now compared to like St. John Bosco when you were in California. Like, what are some similarities and differences here?
So one of the similarities is it is a private school, and the academic standard is about the same. Now, one of the differences I would say would be the level of competition.
Okay.
The kids' mindset, and just general knowledge of the game. Because you usually see some of these kids see the same kids from 7th and 8th grade. Middle school ball to high school ball, there's a lot of familiarity and friendships that come along the way. One of our biggest rivals, Mater Dei, which we played tonight for the CIF championship down in California, we didn't know any of these guys, right?
Okay.
And that's our biggest rival, and we wanted to really give it to them every time. Now it's, I know this guy, and, I went to camp with this guy, and, our families had, dinner the other night, and it doesn't make for a true rival.
Yeah.
These days. So back when I was in high school for Mater Dei, if you were caught wearing red at any time in school, that was bad.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it doesn't seem like it's like that. Seems like it's more, sports are more buddy, and, especially with, Cole Valley Christian and Nampa Christian being big rivals, no one really is, I'm like, that is my rival. I don't want anything to do with them off the field until we are done with school.
Right.
So I think that's one of the biggest differences too. Like, there's no true rivals. Like, we say that they're our rival, but if that's your rival, you don't want anything to do with
I like that
at all.
I have a buddy of mine who actually said that when we talked about just rivals in general, like specifically for college football, but he said something similar to that. Like, if that's my rival, I hate them. I do not like them. Nothing. I don't want it. I don't root for them to win just to help my strength of schedule. I don't do this. I hate them. Right. So that's funny you said that. And you talked about like the level of competition, and just specifically for like Nampa Christian and Cole Valley Christian, for the listeners who aren't from Idaho, these schools are in, I think it's the 2A division,
2A,
right?
mhm.
And we go all up to 5A. So 5A being the highest, which is based on like the enrollment in your school, like the population, how many kids are there. And these schools are in the 2A level, usually the smaller schools. It goes all the way down to 1A. But I mean, that's why I like in California, did it matter? Like, what level was St. John Bosco in your classification, I guess I should say?
So we've always been at the highest level. So we've always been what they call Division 1.
And that's the highest in Cali?
That's the highest
But
level.
how many were enrolled at your school?
So when I went to school, I remember when I was enrolled as a freshman, there were 1,100 boys.
Okay.
So I graduated with about 200 to 250 boys in our class, and that's a lot. That's
okay.
That's quite a bit, right?
But what's at Nampa Christian? What's the enrollment? Do you know off the top of your head or rough estimate?
It'd probably have to be around, I would say probably in the 500s somewhere.
Okay, so it's
maybe
about half.
600s. Yeah. So it gets tough.
Okay.
It gets tough. I mean, Coal Valley is really starting to up their enrollment. They're even thinking about maybe leaving the 2A in a couple years. And same thing with New Plymouth. New Plymouth is really up in their enrollment, and their sports teams are really becoming more competitive. So they're kind of thinking about leaving the 2A as well. So will that happen? I don't know. If it does happen, I think that's good for us because I think we'll be the perennial favorites at Nampa Christian. But we love the competition of playing those two schools, especially our rival in Coal Valley.
Okay. All right. So it just seems like here, just from my experience and what I've seen, typically, I guess it's just so much different, but typically like the better athletes, I say that with quotes around it, like the better athletes play for like the public schools because unless you're at Bishop Kelly because they're in the 4A classification, or they were, I don't know if they're the 5A or 4A now, but BK used to be at the 4A realm when I was in high school. But usually when you have a larger enrollment, around 2,000 to 3,000 kids, you have a larger pool of players that can play for you. And in Boise, in the 5A level for the public schools, it's open enrollment, so you don't have to live in the boundaries and this and this and this. But usually those 5A and 4A schools that have a lot more students that are like the public schools, typically, from what I've seen, have the better athletes. And I think it's weird because it's actually predominantly that way. I know Coal Valley has competed in basketball for a couple of years at the 2A level, and even at the 1A level before that, I used to watch them. But usually it's tough. Like, you don't have the talent pool to pull from, and then you have the enrollment fee on like the tuition on top of that. It like causes a lot of problems, especially in a smaller area like Idaho, whereas California has a lot more population. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? I'm just spewing out the mouth here.
So it's a little different too. Like I mentioned earlier about the 4 kids that transferred into St. John Bosco that helped us win the state title. They started off at public school.
Okay.
And then after 2 years of going to public school, they're like, we want better competition. We think we can get more looks at a private school. So let's, we have a coach that's training us. Like, let's just go over there and train with him, or go to be coached by him at his school. Here, it's not like that. If you play, usually if you're a star at the 2A level, and there are some exceptions, but if you're a star at the 2A level, and you try to move up to the 3A or the 4A, you may be one of the guys just standing on the sidelines, right? Just because your body type and your size just isn't the type that's at that level yet. So it's very difficult for some of those kids to get recruited, and it's very difficult for some of those kids to really see themselves playing beyond high school, just because their size and their athletic ability doesn't allow them to. Now, we do have kids that are playing in college right now. There's, I think, 4 kids, about 5 kids. I know there's 1 kid at C of I.
Okay.
Then we have about 4 kids at Dordt University, which is in Iowa.
Okay.
Which is another small NAIA private school.
Okay.
So usually Dordt is usually come crawling to Nampa Christian, say, hey, who do you got?
I got you.
So they do get an opportunity to play at the next level. If they do have the talent, they're good enough. But normally some of the times when you graduate 8 or 9 seniors, you maybe get 1 guy.
Gotcha. I gotcha. So just one last thing I wanted to ask you in regards to your coaching. What are you trying to do as a coach that like maybe you took from your days playing in California? What can you take from there, and then what are you trying to instill into the kids here?
Structure.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest thing that helped me get to where I am today as far as in athletics was structure. Having a good routine, eating the right things to get you to where you need to go, working out very hard. A lot of kids at the 2A level don't work out.
Right.
So when they get to basketball, when they get to track, or when they get to baseball, and they're seniors, the only lifting that they do or that they consider lifting is, I went to fitness class today. Right. So in California, it's a little different. Right. In California, you play football as a freshman, you don't stop lifting until you're a senior. Right. And by the time you're a senior, it really pays off. And if your skills catch up to your physical ability, those are usually sometimes the guys that get offered scholarships. Like I know off the top of my head, there's about 8 guys currently on St. John Bosco that have D1 letters ready to go. Right. And that's big, for any high school to have that many guys ready to go, ready to play college ball. But at Nampa Christian, or just in general in Idaho, not a lot of guys really take the weight room very seriously.
So true. So true.
Even I see this even sometimes at the bigger schools when I'm watching the news or watching TV or reading the paper, guys just don't take it seriously. So and it all starts, when they're, like you're a rookie in a professional sport, your first year as a freshman, you're just getting to learn the school system. You're just getting to learn what it's like to be a high school student. And then you learn how to lift weights. So then from your freshman year after the season's over to your senior year, if you really hit the weight room hard and you focus and you have good structure at the school, you'll be okay. Your skills will eventually catch up to your body, and you'll be just fine.
I like that. Structure is such an important part of any part of life, too, not just in the sports world. It's important for you in your career or whatever it may be. And speaking of that, I want to finish the show by talking a little bit about you now. We've talked about you coaching, but you have that structured mindset. It's gotten you to where you are now. I kind of want to talk about how that's helped you in your entrepreneurial adventures, right? Like you're going off on these ventures. I want you to talk about what you've got going on now with that. You work a full-time job, but what else do you have on the side that you're doing besides coaching?
So I along with coaching and my full-time job, I also play a little bit of semi-pro football. I know some people like to call it rec ball because we don't get paid, but I still call it semi-pro because I like to think in my mind that I'm always going out there to dominate. Yeah. So the first 2 years in the league, this is coming up this spring will be my, 5th year in the league. My first 2 years in the league, I was the offensive MVP.
Yeah.
Right. So in the second year, we went to the championship. So we're still looking for a championship in this league this year. So we're looking good so far in practice, but I think we have the pieces in place this year to really get where we need to go. And I'm always in the mindset of dominating. So along with the semi-pro thing, right, I also coach. I also run a network marketing business that I partner with an anti-aging company, and I love it. The company's based out of Provo, Utah. The company's called New Skin. We deal with anything from supplements to anti-aging to just living a better quality of life.
I like that. And you're able to balance all of these things. That's what's cool about you is you have all these things. You're running a side business that you got going on, which is the ultimate goal to try to make that eventually your main income is what's your ultimate goal with that?
So that's the goal. The ultimate goal is to make that my regular income, my standard of income for my wife and I, and eventually when we have kids, that will be our income, and that's because both of us want to be stay-at-home parents.
Yeah.
Right. And then along with being a stay-at-home parent, I will be able to coach my own kids as well. Yeah. So when that time comes, that was really valuable for me, having my mom, my dad, and my stepdad there to really help me along the way. My stepdad wasn't a real football, basketball guy, baseball guy. He was more of a track guy, so when I did track in high school, he was there. My dad was the football guy. He was the baseball guy. Anything else I wanted to do, that was my dad. My mom was she was there for the support. So just knowing that my parents were there to help me along the journey is something that I want to do with my kids along the way.
For sure.
Just being able to be around them all the time and not having to worry to go back to a job, but knowing that my job is to be a parent.
Yeah.
Is what I'm looking for. That's why I do all this side hustle or side business stuff to eventually get to that point.
That's awesome, and I commend you for that. Do you think that your days of playing sports and competing, and still even today, have helped you be able to structure your life like now to where you can actually manage all these things without being too stressed out about it? Do you think that had some sort of influence for you, like being able to have all this structure your entire life, respecting authority, this, like through sports that you've learned?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's helped out in putting things into place.
Okay.
Along the way, you have to learn certain things about life, about having a journal, having the calendar, having things like that. When you're given those things in high school, you don't really know what they mean. Giving a calendar, making a schedule. You just say like, oh, I just have this, but I don't really know how to use it. But
right.
as you get older and you start to learn, you start to think back like, okay, that's what that was for. This is what this is for. So you start to put things in perspective of how you really want your life to be structured, and how your days want to be structured, and how your weeks want to be structured, and pretty soon that turns into months, and that turns into years. So now you can plan for the future, and you can get things done easily, and you know where all your free time is, right? So then now you can balance life around all your free time.
I like it. Nice, man. So where can the people find you, like if they wanted to, purchase your anti-aging products or whatever it may be? Where can they find you? Is there a social media plug-in? I don't know where we can point them to. So
you can always add me on Facebook. Just look for my name, Daniel Jenkins.
Okay.
You can always find me there, or you can look for me on Instagram. I am under DJinx, and that's JINX 2140. You can always add me on Instagram. I'm always posting things on there, or Facebook, and you can just reach out to me from there, and I can get you hooked up on whatever you need.
He's got a lot of stuff. So I'm going to put the link here on the bottom so you guys can find him on Instagram and Facebook. And if you guys need some stuff, check it out. So we're going to finish this up with the Guru's Gauntlet. Just a couple of random questions for you, just rapid fire. I want to get your take on some sports topics. So you ready for the Guru's Gauntlet?
I'm ready.
All right. D'Angelo Russell or Lonzo Ball?
Lonzo Ball.
Why?
Lonzo Ball is a pure point guard, and he's more of a leader. D'Angelo Russell is a scorer, and that's taking nothing away from D'Angelo Russell. I think he's going to have an awesome career. I just think that the Lakers needed a floor general rather than a scorer at the point guard position.
Tom Brady or Peyton Manning?
Tom Brady.
Why?
I love Peyton Manning. I love everything that he did for the Denver Broncos when he was there, but the start of his career, he was a Bronco killer. So when he was in Indianapolis. And I've always liked Tom Brady. I've respected his growth throughout, his career in Michigan. Was overlooked. He gets in the NFL, he was overlooked. And then now to be playing at 40 years old with 5 championships and saying that he wants to play until 43, 45. It's kind of looking like he may get, 6 or 7 in there somewhere, which will be disappointing for some people. But Tom Brady, man, it seems like he's reverse aging.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl this year then?
The New England Patriots. And the reason I say that, this goes back to that man, Tom Brady. Even with all the injuries, no Edelman, no Gronkowski's been in and out of the lineup. Not a consistent running game. Tom Brady seems to just win games every single week, and you always look at him and say, how much better can he get? And each week he gets better. New cast of characters almost every week. His line is inconsistent. Sometimes his defense is inconsistent, but Bill Belichick and Tom Brady have a recipe over there that I don't think anyone can touch.
Who's a better coach, Bill Belichick or Popovich in the basketball game?
I'm going to have to say Greg Popovich.
Why?
Because he has a system in place like Bill Belichick, but I think Popovich's connection with his players is a little bit deeper than football, because, when you're dealing with the football roster, you're dealing with 53 different individuals,
right,
along with 12, I believe it's 6 to 12 practice squad members, along with your staff and all. And, that's a lot of people to deal with. In basketball, you have your 13 to 15 players. You have your staff. You have the owner. So you can get a little bit closer with basketball players. And he's been able to take different teams to the finals, to the playoffs that no one expected. Everyone
Right.
expects Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, as long as they're together, to be there in the end. Every year, it seems like we ride off the San Antonio Spurs, and here's Popovich saying, hey, we're not quite dead yet because I'm still the coach and I'm still ready to go. So Popovich, in my mind, is a better coach than Bill Belichick.
I respect that. Last question. Best conference in college football?
Now, I'm a little biased here, and I'm going to go with the Pac-12.
Okay. I actually, I'm so happy you said that. I didn't know you were going to say that, honestly. I didn't know. Can you tell me why you think that? Because I've had podcasts. I've had an episode talking about why the SEC is overrated and why the Pac-12 actually has a legitimate point. My guest made a really good point discussing the competitive nature of the Pac-12 from the top to the bottom. It's not just top-heavy. They have a lot of competitive teams, even on the bottom feeders. But I want your thoughts. Why do you think the Pac-12 is the best conference in college football?
Just for that reason. It's loaded from top to bottom. Now, you're going to have your brand names like your USC and your Stanfords and your Oregons. But it's not an easy conference. I mean, we saw that last year. USC was one of the best teams in the country, starting off at number 10 before Sam Darnold took over and we lost to Alabama. But USC was one of the best teams in the country, and Colorado ended up winning the South last year. Washington, with Coach Peterson, has been a stable force, ever since he's gotten there. Oregon is Oregon. They're going to find their rhythm again and get back to where they need to. Stanford is always the standard for being consistent. Even with 3 losses this year, now 4, they were right there in the end, to win the North. After 1 or 2 losses, everyone written them off, So it's tough to say that the SEC is really the more dominant conference because they're really top heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Usually there's 2 teams in the East and 2 teams in the West, and then everyone else is kind of just fighting for the bottom. In the Pac-12, any given week you can have an upset. Any given week you can have, USC can be on top one week and Arizona State can be the top next week. In the SEC and other conferences, it seems like there's the mainstays that are at the top, and that's it. I would say the same thing about the Big 12. The Big 12 is Oklahoma State. I know TCU is a very good team, and Coach Patterson over there has done an excellent job over the last couple of years, but when you think of the Big 12, you think of Oklahoma, you think of Texas, you think of Oklahoma State. You don't really think about Iowa State or anyone like that. So it's Pac-12 from top to bottom is the conference that really is looked upon as, well, sorry, you guys kind of beat up on each other, so you guys are left out of the college football playoff. But it's not our fault that from top to bottom we have great athletes. So that's why I think the Pac-12 is best conference in the nation.
Yeah, you're gonna get some fans and some haters here for that, but I actually love that insight. So my one buddy Clayton, he's gonna really like this episode. So for all the listeners, this is Daniel Jenkins. Jenks, I appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure, man. So for everybody out there, it's the Game Time Guru. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Before you leave, please head on over to iTunes and leave me a review. I would greatly appreciate it because it helps me out a ton. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support.